that big of a deal. Once again, it's a collective thing because history belongs to all of us. Regardless, if we have many and we lose 2, or even if we have 10 and we lose 2, yeah, it's a heavy price to pay. But once again, these are ingots, so it could be an opportunity to study them further. The same metal has also been used in the Cuore Cryogenic Underground Observatory for Rare Events project in Italy. Oh my gosh, they called it HART. That's what that means, which the acronym, which will soon begin searching for a theorized particle decay process called goodness gracious, neutrinoless double beta decay, which, if found, could explain why matter dominates antimatter in the universe. Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. Use the freaking ingots at this point. These experiments and other require extreme shielding to block out any extraneous particles that might be mistaken for the rare signals they hunt. Makes sense. The lead in question once went into the making of coins, pipes, construction materials, and weapons in the ancient Roman civilization. Absolutely, among other things. It is most commonly found now at shipwreck sites. Yeah, because usually, believe it or not, when you find both organic material but also metal, underwater preservation is actually excellent because it's either that or it's anaerobic conditions that are. But sometimes the underwater sand, for example, does help preserve metals. It's I know it's counterintuitive because you think if I put metal in water it's going to rust. Well, already rust depends on the type of metal because not all metal rusts, as it's a reaction to oxygen. But in general, underwater conditions do happen to be some of the best for preservation, and as far as I understand, the only better ones will be complete anaerobic conditions that you do find in very dry weather, climates sometimes, where private companies harvest it and melt down the Roman ingots into standard bricks before passing them on to customers, many of whom are physicists. Yeah, I would like to know who the others are, because once again, if you are melting down something ancient Roman, or Greek for that matter, or Akkadian, yeah, there has to be a reason. So if this involves some black market stuff, then of course I would be very much opposed, and I think in fact it could help. If you can combat the black market better, more systematically, and preserve some of these items like coins, then we would have a bigger pool, and therefore if we have to sacrifice a few for the sake of science, it would be less of a punch in the gut. Open quotes, none of us take it casually. You don't want historical artifacts to be destroyed unnecessarily, close quotes, says physicist Blas Cervera Cabrera of Stanford University, who leads the CDMS project. Absolutely, yeah. Nevertheless, ancient lead is the best material available for shielding dark matter detectors, he says, because it releases so little radiation or background particles. Open quotes, the kind of background level that you are achieving with ancient lead are roughly 1,000 times below that of commercially available lead, close quotes. Yeah, it does sound like this is indeed the best possible material that they could find for this. So once again, personally don't have a problem with them using it, as long as they don't use all of it. All lead mined on Earth naturally contains some amount of radioactive element uranium-235, which decays over time into another radioactive element, a version of lead called lead-210. When lead ore is first processed, it is purified and most of the uranium is removed. Whatever lead-210 is already present begins to break down, with half of it decaying on average every 22 years. In Roman lead, almost all of the lead-210 is already decayed, whereas in lead mined today, it is just beginning to decay. Of course, many lead-210 atoms have already decayed in this ore too, but the supply is constantly replenished by uranium in unprocessed lead. Okay, and then open quotes, the longer since it was originally processed, the lower its intrinsic radioactivity, close quotes. Gonzalez Salva says. So basically, if you manage to find, so this is not necessarily due to the processes and the techniques used by the Romans to process the lead. That's what I thought at first, but no, in fact, it's just a matter of time. So as far as I'm concerned, as far as they're concerned, then if they could find Akkadian lead, or if they even processed it, or if they could find anything even more ancient than Roman, it would be even better at this point. The Romans were not the first lead brick makers, of course. The ancient Greeks were also manufacturing the building material about 200 years earlier, whereas this lead probably also finds its way into some physical experiment. It is scarcer, and the supply of Roman lead is not exactly plentiful either. open quotes, we may lose all ancient Roman lead, and therefore the information about ancient technology, shipping, trade, etc. it can offer, if its use for this kind of purpose becomes widespread, says archaeologist John Carman, Perez Alvaro's advisor at the University of Birmingham. I understand the problem here. We don't have that many. If they keep using it, we'll run out of it. Yeah, that would be a problem, but then again, how much can you extract? So here's my thing. That's why I'm saying, if you've got this lead ingot, and you can study it, and you can try to extrapolate all the information you can, at one point you will reach a plateau, because I mean that's it. So I do say study as much as you want, study all you can. Where was it found? How was it made? What kind of constituents does it have? Let's do a full-on analysis. Let's try to figure out if it had any specific way in which it was forged, what kind of, not forged, but produced. But once that's been exhausted, what's that ingot gonna do? Stay in a museum? So at that point, I would preserve a few. I would not. Like, I would say that, okay, if we've got 2 left, no, let's go and look for more at that point. But I would take, what's the need to have 70 ingots as opposed to 15 if we can help progressing science? An ingot is an ingot. There isn't as I say, it's not a statue, it's not a weapon that we can learn the manufacturing capacities, and people can actually look at the sword and be like, oh my gosh, look at that, that's a real deal from the ancient period. An ingot is not as precious as fully developed objects and items. It is still precious. So I wouldn't say run out of them completely, but I think there is only so far you can go when it comes to all the information you can get from it before you reach a plateau, and that's it. At that point, it would just be in a museum. So even though I'm someone who absolutely loves the preservation of anything ancient, once again, ingots are a little bit on the lower end of the scale for me. The law surrounding this dispute is murky. Ooh, let's go into the legal aspect. The 2001 UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage prohibits commercial exploitation of historical shipwreck artifacts, as it should, but this is not a commercial exploitation. Whether that applies to physics experiment is unclear. I think it shouldn't be clear. It's pretty obvious that it shouldn't. It's not for economic gain. It's for the process of science, so it's completely different. Open quotes. Because the final use of the lead is for knowledge, not actually for the marketplace, this lies somewhere in between, close quotes. González Salba says, well, I don't think Mr. Salba should say it. A lawyer should identify this at this point. And already his interpretation sounds incorrect to me. It's not in between. It just doesn't lie within if this UNESCO Convention protection law only speaks about commercial exploitation, then it's outside the spectrum of this law and regulation. Just as a matter of deductive logic at this point. Open quotes, this is where the regulation is not 100% clear about it. Close quotes, let's see. Both archaeologists and physicists say better guidelines are necessary. Open quotes, we need the sort of deep analysis of the issues involved that Elena is undertaking, or Elena, followed by a serious debate involving all interested parties, including international bodies such as UNESCO, to construct a set of clear guidelines that will hopefully protect the interests of the scientific community, including that of archaeology, close quotes, Carman says. Yeah, I think as long as you make it like there are these exceptions and specific scenarios in which we are okay, because what we are gaining from it supersedes and in a way trumps what we're about to lose, which is again an historic artifact, then as long as there is that kind of overlap and the historical artifact is its value, because they're not all equal. Not every historical artifact is equal in value and importance and depth of what we can learn from it. So at the end of the day, as long as the value of the object is relatively on the lower end and the amount of what we can acquire as a species is higher than what we can get to lose, then I would say you can do it. And the only thing I would say within the law, unless it's the last specimen that we have, because I mean, in that case, you have to just go and look for more. That's what I would say. But yeah, no, it really is a case-by-case scenario, but I think general, broader definition lines can be used and can be applied to this specific conundrum.